on, people. All right, so you've heard the beginning of my legacy. You've heard where it started with a dead match. You've heard some of the transformation that I put myself through, and believe me, I had some help doing it. You've seen how that match kind of came back up, and my presence finally was like, okay, I own the dynamite, I'll take it, I'll use it, and how that turned into this whole blasting through brick walls for me. There was another piece to the stratospheric success path that I was putting myself on, and that was a little book called The Go-Giver. How many of you have read The Go-Giver? It's a transformative little book, and I mean little book. 5 laws to stratospheric success in parable form. Now remember when I said I didn't expect to ever meet these people who are creating legacies, let alone become one? Well, you gotta be careful about things you don't expect, or you say never, but that you want. Because I started meeting people. And the first to really challenge that was one of the authors of that little book named Bob Burg. So that's a whole nother story, and I won't tell the whole story, although the story of how I ended up meeting Bob and working with Bob and his co-author, John David Mann, could be a parable that belongs with the book because it follows the 5 laws of stratospheric success to a T. But in looking at that story, and getting the opportunity to create coaching materials around that story, I started realizing one of my unique talents. And one of my unique talents is interpretive reading. And what I mean by interpretive reading is to be able to look at a story and see where the deeper lesson is, where the universals are. So we all know it's important to be able to tell story. I've been up here telling story, and I know you tell stories to yourself and other people every day. And we've talked about the story that you're telling yourself. That's all about telling story. What about hearing story? Because in creating the coaching materials for that book, I realized that one thing that I had a very innate talent that had been honed through childhood was for interpreting story, for hearing the deeper currents in a story, and for figuring out what the critical success factors were in a success story. Do you ever think about that? You read a story, how many times do you say, I wish, if only, that could have been me? Do you ever stop and think,